UFC Vegas 108 full fight card predictions. Taira versus HyunSung Park. Less than a week's notice, HyunSung Park took this fight after taking a short notice fight against Steve Erceg, pulling out of that to take this main event, a huge opportunity for HyunSung Park that the UFC has offered because Amir Albazi had to pull out of the Taira fight. I'm going to go through every single fight on this card. I usually do my predictions videos on Monday. However, I started my YouTube a little bit later. Started right back up on this YouTube channel, so we're going to do our full fight card predictions today. We'll do the recap of the card tomorrow. And yeah, you guys will see this a little bit later than usual, but still, we have a pretty fun card. Now, I know a lot of people are ripping this card to absolute shreds, but please hear me out, guys. This card's fun. There are a bunch of fun fights in this card. We are going to enjoy the card. I know it's in the Apex. It sucks that it's in the Apex. Surprisingly, the first time the UFC's gone back to the Apex and God knows how long, we lose a main event, 2 people miss weight. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen that many bad weight misses. These guys miss weight, Tresean Gore and Rafael Estevan, by like 3 pounds or so. We'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, pretty decent overall card. I think we have some fun fights, some whatever ones. We'll go over it. We'll have some fun breaking it down. Pierre Rodriguez versus Ketlin Souza to open off the card. Pierre Rodriguez, in my opinion, is going to be the better overall fighter here. I think she has some decency overall on the feet. Souza's probably the better finisher on the feet. However, Rodriguez's only finishes do come by knockout. I think Rodriguez is a much better grappler, though I'm watching Angela Hill take Ketlin Souza down repeatedly, and I don't really see how Pierre Rodriguez isn't going to do the same with, in my opinion, a more physical takedown, better entries than Angela Hill overall, and she's just a lot younger than Angela Hill is, and I don't see much of a size advantage for Ketlin Souza in this fight. She has a reach disadvantage in this fight as well. I'm not really seeing much in Souza's game that's going to prevent Pierre Rodriguez from implementing grappling, keeping the volume that she wants on the feet. I think Rodriguez is going to be a little bit better overall across the entirety of the fight. I think Rodriguez wins by decision here. Souza has some big finishing upside, but apart from a gigantic knockout, I don't really see how she wins this fight. Felipe Bunez versus Rafael Estevan. Now, Bunez has some pretty slick submissions overall. He has some decent overall jiu-jitsu when it comes to off his back, trying to throw open armbar here and there. But other than that, I don't really see much out of his game. I think the completely different level in positional grappling between the two, night and day difference. I think Rafael Estevan is a better wrestler, both defensively and offensively. A little concerning as he goes down the fight if he doesn't finish it early. I mean, the third round he starts to gas a little bit. Want to see how that looks if it ends up getting to here. But I think there's a very good opportunity for Estevan to strangle Felipe Bunez, to say the least. I mean, to put it in different words, I guess. Like, I think he could choke out Bunez. I think Bunez is very open to getting submitted. I think positionally, he leaves himself in very big opportunities to get submitted. And yes, you should take risks in fights when you get taken down and put in bad positions, as Bunez does in his guard. But I do think his guard's going to open up a lot of opportunity for Estevan to pass it, and then Estevan gets into better position to where he's going to be able to finish this fight. And I don't think Bunez is going to offer too much resistance for the most part until Estevan gets a very good position where Bunez can't get out of, and Estevan ends up submitting him. I think Estevan's slightly better on the feet. I don't think it's going to be much on the feet in this fight, though. I think Estevan's going to be shooting, and it's going to be a pretty fun grappling match, and we're going to see Estevan submit Felipe Bunez. He's just a much better overall fighter, and I'm honestly surprised that this fight is being made. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I can't recall if there are any issues on the making of this fight, because I don't know why Estevan's getting this booking. I don't know how you beat Charles Johnson and all of a sudden you're getting this. He beat Charles Johnson, right? That happened? That happened, right? I'm pretty sure it happened. I'm going to go with that happened. But yeah, I don't understand this matchmaking. I think Estevan's going to finish Bunez. Austin Bashi versus John Yanis. Also another fight that just came in on less than a week's notice out of nowhere, which is weird. And Yanis is making his UFC debut on less than a week's notice against a pretty young prospect. Why is the UFC throwing Austin Bashi in here on less than a week's notice to make weight, which he did? And then John Yanis, why is he all of a sudden just fighting his UFC debut against Austin Bashi on a week's notice? This fight wasn't made. There was no fight that like fell apart and they had to remake and get somebody in and bring John Yanis in to fight his UFC debut, or bring Austin Bashi in to fight his debut and who wants to make his debut and his opponent pulled out. No, there was no opponent. This fight literally just got made out of the blue, out of nowhere. They just slotted it into this card. I don't know what they're doing. Bashi's a much better grappler. Yanis isn't really that good of a grappler overall. I think that's literally what we're going to be watching the whole fight. I think we're going to be watching Austin Bashi get his back. Bashi's going to take his back. He's going to submit him the rear naked choke, and we're going to watch that happen. And Bashi's going to get his first win in the UFC. John Yanis came for, I guess, a $12K paycheck and walks out. Good $12K he made in a week, I guess. But, I mean, you know, it's the UFC. There is only $12K at the end of the day. I'm saying only $12K while I'm sitting on my chair begging it for it. Anyways, Andre Puliaev versus Nick Klein. Nick Klein's a much better grappler. That's the concern in this fight. Nick Klein is definitely a better grappler than Puliaev. And Puliaev does allow himself to make some mistakes on the mat where Klein could definitely capitalize on, and especially the back take. Klein is a really good back take overall, and I do think Puliaev might be able to give his back up often if Klein can get it into that position. But I think Klein doesn't like to take a damage. And if Puliaev does put it on him, like he does in most of his fights, apart from the CLD fight, Christian Leroy Duncan fight, where Puliaev came into the UFC and didn't really do anything in that fight. Didn't really offer much for CLD, but CLD also was very weirdly low volume in that fight with Pulyaev offering him nothing back. I think Pulyaev is going to come in here with a full camp. He's going to be the bigger fighter. I think he has the longer reach, if I'm not wrong. He has the longer reach in this fight slightly. I thought it was a little bit more. I think Klein's going to get hit. I think Klein's going to get hit. He's going to get hard, and I don't think he's going to want to, and I don't think Klein's going to be able to take that damage. I don't think he wants to take that damage. And although Klein's going to be grappling, I think he's going to probably succeed every now and then trying to get Pulyaev down. If he does, opportunity for the back take for sure. But I think the moment he doesn't get that, I think the moment he fails at that takedown or fails at that back take and gets reversed or falls off the back or whatever it is, I think that's where the end of the fight's going to start taking place. I think Pulyaev is going to hurt him. I think Pulyaev probably finishes this fight by knockout. It could be a stale dead fight, to be honest, but the way Klein fights and kind of pulls in Pulyaev for this fight, I'd be surprised. And if you go look at Pulyaev's tape, apart from the CLD fight, he's typically, live to go in for this knockout, and I think Klein's a pretty good opportunity for him to do so. I think Klein's going to get knocked out in this fight by Pulyaev. Tresean Gore versus Rodolfo Vieira. Trying to keep these videos not 30 minutes long, 40 minutes long. I don't feel like anybody wants to listen to that long of a breakdown. Sometimes you want stuff in the background, and then, you end up having stuff to listen to for a while, but more objective-based videos. I don't know. You guys let me know if they're decent. If you guys prefer it to be long form or a little bit longer than like a 10-minute or so video or however long this ends up being. Some of my videos end up being 30 minutes anyways. Tresean Gore, yapped for no reason. Tresean Gore, Rodolfo Vieira. Rodolfo Vieira is the levels above grappler. Much better grappler overall. It's not negotiable how much better of a grappler he is, but he looks slow on the feet now. He looks like he can't take damage whatsoever. He looks like he's way too open to get hit on the feet. His boxing is supposed to look like it's sharp enough and it's clean enough and it's the correct form and it's tight enough in his guard up top, and he just looks slow. His offense looks horrible. That Andre Petrosky fight is as embarrassing of a performance as it gets for Rodolfo Vieira, and I don't think you can honestly make up for that, especially with his age. What are you, 36 years old right now? They're not putting that up there. I still don't understand how the UFC isn't putting age as like a major proponent of the statistics here. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think Rodolfo Vieira is very live to get knocked out here, and I think Tresean Gore is very live to get submitted. However, I'm not watching Tresean Gore get taken down repeatedly and, get his back taken. I do think he can get complacent at times. However, and Vieira is an unbelievable jiu-jitsu player. I mean, night and day difference between these two. And, I think if Vieira gets him down, the back's right there, arm triangle's right there. But I think Gore is athletic enough to avoid a couple of these things. I think Gore's physically imposing enough to keep Vieira off of him for the most part. I think the problem with Gore in this fight is the amount of damage he just took against Marco Tulio, which a lot of people are considering it a beating, and it was a pretty big beating that Tulio gave Gore in that fight and ended up finishing it. But Gore held his own for a lot of that fight. Gore returned a lot in that fight, and he had some very big moments against Marco Tulio in that fight. That was a very good competitive fight between Marco Tulio and Tresean Gore. And when I was watching Tresean Gore on The Ultimate Fighter, I think this is like the return of The Ultimate Fighter when it was Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. I think Tresean Gore was on that season when they were the coaches. Gore didn't look bad. Like, he was promising. He had this forward pressure, physically imposing, really good power, clean with his strikes. There's some mental blocking with Gore in these fights that gets him to stop, gets him to slow down, gets him to not put this pace on, gets him to not put... I think he has the cardio. I think this guy's decent. I think Tresean Gore is actually a pretty good fighter. I think there's a lot of mental... the mental side of the game is affecting him big time in these fights, and it shows it. And Marco Tulio forced a fight out of him, and it was a pretty entertaining fight to watch. You got to see Tresean Gore open up a little bit more, and Marco Tulio is a fantastic prospect. It's not a shame if Tresean Gore losing that fight. I think Gore can hurt Vieira. I think Vieira is much, much less durable than Gore is. I do think Vieira, if he gets cracked here, if he gets hit big, he's going to struggle to do anything in this fight. He's going to flail. I don't think Vieira's recovery is as good anymore. I don't really think that. I think the age is getting to Vieira big time. And not only in his takedown attempts, his ability to put some volume on the feet and set up his takedowns, etc. I think it's getting to Vieira, and his cardio was never that great to begin with. So if he takes damage early, I'd be surprised the later this fight goes if he can maintain himself. And I think I'm going to pick Gore by knockout. I think Tresean Gore is going to knock out Rodolfo Vieira. I'm risking Vieira obviously just taking him down, getting his back, and submitting him, or whatever it is the submission is going to be. It more likely is going to be a rear naked choke in this one, but I can see an arm triangle as well for sure. I'd be shocked if Vieira explodes, instantly takes down Gore. I really would, based on what I'm seeing from Gore in his last couple fights, and based on what I'm seeing on Rodolfo Vieira here. Now, if Gore goes for a guillotine on him and a high elbow guillotine, he's playing into Vieira's game, because I'd be even more shocked if Gore attempts his high elbow guillotine and it actually gets to Vieira, and he gets a dominant position at the bare minimum out of it. I think Vieira gets him down. If Gore not even shoots for a guillotine, he isn't jump guillotine. He pulls his high elbow guillotine. I think it's a very interesting fight. That's why I'm talking about it a lot. I think Gore knocks out Vieira. Either Vieira subs him, Gore knocks him out. I'm going with Gore by knockout here. Nathan Fletcher versus Rinya Nakamura. Nakamura has a problem with separating in these fights. He has a problem with like showcasing that he's the better fighter. He always showcases he's a better athlete. At all times, Rinya Nakamura is showcasing he's a better athlete. He is the better wrestler in most of his fights. But that Muin Gafurov fight, what are we doing? What happened? Why was he not wrestling in the Muin Gafurov fight? Why did I watch Rinya Nakamura try to box Muin Gafurov and he got clipped? And he didn't really try to wrestle too much after that. He shot one takedown, got stuffed, didn't try. Stopped trying the rest of the fight. That's not going to be the greatest thing in the world to do when you're not that good of a striker, especially when you were a 9-0, pretty green prospect overall. I mean, if you guys watch Rinya Nakamura with his wrestling, when he's on top, unbelievable transitions. He has really good overall transitions off the guard. Really good understanding of hips, the body control, leg control when he is on the mat. It's very fun to watch if you enjoy the transitions on the mat, but like, put it together. Do something with it. Like, get yourself to a finishing position. This is the problem with wrestlers in MMA. Wrestlers get these guys down. They get them controlled, but they don't really understand how to posture. They don't understand how to posture up. They don't understand how to put hooks in for a rear naked choke. They don't understand how to set up an arm triangle. I mean, that is the wrestler's choke, an arm triangle. But that's honestly most of the time all they can do, and that's against really low-level opponents. They start doing those arm triangles, and you don't really see any of these wrestlers, whether it's the Japanese wrestlers or the American wrestlers. You have the combat sambo guys from Dagestan, and you have those guys that actually practice the grappling aspect of it, the jiu-jitsu aspect of it, the submission aspect of it. You don't see these wrestlers doing so, and you start finding out when they start taking these guys down, and yes, they get dominant position over them, and then what? Rinya Nakamura needs to separate on the mat. He needs to be able to get a guy down and separate, and Fletcher isn't easy to deal with on the mat. It's not going to be the easiest fight for him. However, he's much less physically imposing than Nakamura is. Nakamura is a much better overall athlete. He's much stronger overall. I think he's a much better wrestler. I think he could definitely crack on the feet, but never going to rely on him on the feet. I think Nakamura wins by decision. I think Fletcher's relatively durable. I didn't like that Colin Lawford performance, and I thought Lawford won the fight, although it was a very close one. I know a lot of people had Fletcher winning it. I thought Lawford won it. I don't know, close, and I'm not really going to be picking a guy who went close with Colin Lawford. And looking at the stylistic matchup here, if Lawford's holding you against the cage, I don't see how Nakamura is not going to be able to at least take him down, as long as Nakamura shoots. But yeah, I think Nakamura is going to win by decision here. Onto the main card, Kevin Vallejos versus Danny Silva. Danny Silva is actually a pretty good overall prospect. I think he's a pretty good overall fighter. He's a little bit taller over than Vallejos. He's actually pretty much bigger for the division than Vallejos is. But Danny Silva's weight cut looked horrible. Danny Silva looked as drained as it gets. Vallejos was on Twitter explaining how Danny Silva might not make the weight, and then Silva made it half a pound under the limit. He made it at 144.5. Or what was it, 145.5, or was it 144.5? I thought he made 144.5 when I saw it on Twitter. It's labeled as 145.5 on UFC's website, but I'm not sure if that's up to date. Yeah, I think today he weighed in at 144.5. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think Silva's weight cut looked bad. I think he's relatively durable, but I also think he's relatively hittable. I didn't like these split decisions that he's been going into. His performances in them are pretty good with the pressure, but at the same, and he's honestly a pretty slick boxer. He's a pretty slick kickboxer. He's honestly not that bad of a grappler defensively and offensively. Doesn't really use it too much offensively, but keeps himself there honestly defensively. Vallejos isn't really going to be shooting too many takedowns. I don't think so. I think he's definitely a much better overall prospect. I think his boxing is better than Danny Silva. I think he finds his shots a little bit better. I think he's a little bit more explosive, and I think he's a little less hittable. And I do think him finding himself inside the pocket, where this is more than likely going to be a predominant boxing fight, where Silva's not going to be shooting for takedowns. I don't think so. And Vallejos, I don't really think he's going to be shooting for takedowns, but I think it would be in his favor if he does. I don't think he's going to be landing too many of them or training too many of them successfully. But I think Vallejos is going to be much better overall with his setups here. I think the body's going to be open for him. I do think Danny Silva gets hit a little often in the head, and I do think Vallejos is the guy to find it. And judging on that weight cut and judging on Danny Silva not looking that great, looking very drained, and honestly the power of Vallejos and his ability to finish and find the shots and put himself through on the inside and find those shots, find that uppercut, the body shot, sets up top. I think Vallejos does a very good job of doing that. I think Vallejos is going to knock out Danny Silva in this fight. If he doesn't knock him out, it'll be a very good overall decision. It'll be a very fun fight no matter how that goes. I think Vallejos comes out with a knockout. Moving on, Neil Magny versus Eliseo Velasquez dos Santos. Old guys fighting. UFC card. Main card. In the Apex. Magny can control Zaleski at times, but I don't think Magny's really going to be able to give Zaleski something that he's been dealing with and struggling with, which is some very, very big finishing ability against him that could hurt him, that could cost him minutes, that can cost him rounds, and it cost him the Chidi and Jokawani fight. However, Neil Magny doesn't have the power of Chidi. He doesn't have the power of Chidi and Jokawani. He doesn't have the finishing ability. He doesn't have the knees in the clinch. He doesn't have the collar tie that Chidi and Jokawani does. Neil Magny is going to clinch you. He's going to try to keep you at bay with his jab, but I think Zaleski's going to be moving forward in this fight. I think Zaleski can manage in the clinch here. I don't think Magny's going to offer him too much in the clinch. And I think Zaleski's honestly the better jiu-jitsu player. If you look at Zaleski's grappling, the guy's a fantastic grappler. He just doesn't really use it too often in the UFC. I think he's a better striker. I think he's going to be able to move forward in this fight, get the pressure, find his shots a little bit more. I think he can hurt Magny in this fight. I'm going to go by decision, but I do think he can hurt Magny in this fight. And I think Zaleski's going to be able to separate a little bit. I think it's going to be a pretty clear decision for him in this. And I think Zaleski's going to win a 30-27 decision in this fight. It'd be very weird for me to see him lose a round against Magny at this state where Magny doesn't offer much damage on the other side. He's not really setting anything up crazily unless he lands some like random knee on the inside of Zaleski coming in and entering. And Zaleski all of a sudden wants to use his wrestling in the UFC proactively. And Magny somehow times it with a knee up the middle. That's the only one I could see, but I'd be shocked. I think Zaleski should be able to outpoint him across this fight. If he finds a finish, I'd honestly be a little bit surprised. I think Magny can somewhat hold his own relative to durability. We watched him in the Mike Malott fight and several other fights across from that. I mean, he does pretty well overall managing, unless you're Carlos Pratas or something. But yeah, I don't think Zaleski is that. I think Zaleski can manage himself at 30-27. I think Magny can manage with any sort of damage, and the clinch work will probably be tit for tat in that. And I think my camera just completely went blurry. Yeah, I think Zaleski should win by decision. Nora Cornell versus Carol Rosa. Carol Rosa is the better fighter. Carol Rosa is also somebody who is going to be smaller in this fight, and she's going to showcase that she struggles with these proactive grapplers that get in her face, that get her in the clinch, and try to get her down. The Eileen Perez fight with Carol Rosa is essentially very similar to this fight, where I think Nora Cornell is a little bit better than Eileen Perez. I think she has a little bit better cardio than Eileen Perez. I think she's better on the feet. I think she's better on the mat. I think she has much better finishing ability on the mat. I think she has much better transitions. I don't know how Carol Rosa lost that fight to Eileen Perez, but I also don't know how she would beat Nora Cornell if that's the fight she's losing. I mean, it's a very similar stylistic matchup where Cornell's quite literally better everywhere, and Carol Rosa's giving up size advantage in this fight as opposed to against Eileen Perez. Perez is the shorter fighter compared to Rosa. At some point, at the base minimum, that Carol Rosa had some sort of reach advantage, some sort of advantage of being able to strike at distance against Eileen Perez. I don't think she's going to be able to do that too often against Nora. Yeah, I think Rosa needs to find herself on the inside and landing some big shots, and I think her finding herself on the inside is going to lead to her getting taken down. And I think Cornell's going to win some big minutes in control and maybe even find some dominant positions on the mat here, and I think Cornell's going to win this fight. I think it'll be a pretty interesting decision. I'd be surprised to see Rosa finish in this fight. I'm going to go Nora Cornell by decision, but I could see a route where Cornell gets these positions on the mat and Rosa gets finished. It's weird to think about it, honestly. I'd be surprised. I'm trying to think, like, does Cornell get mount off of a position and ends up getting the back? I don't really see Cornell getting an arm triangle. You know, the women's MMA arm bar is always available. Do I see that happening? No, not necessarily. Cornell doesn't really jump for arm bars too much, unless I'm mistaken. But, yeah, I think Cornell gets... I think she's going to go for the back. I think that's the most likely opportunity her to get to the back, as Rosa probably gives it up to try to get up, maybe against the cage, or maybe there's a mount and Cornell's raining down hammers, and all of a sudden Rosa gives her back, and we go from there. I don't know. I think it's going to be more likely a decision, or Cornell wins a decision in this fight. A lot of control on the mat, a lot of pretty dominant positions overall, and Rosa doesn't find her way up, and Rosa honestly gives up these positions left, right, and center. Moving on, Elvis Brenner versus Esteban Ribovics. I think it's going to be a very sick fight. I think Brenner takes damage a lot, and Ribovics gives damage a lot, and that's going to make for a very fun fight. I think we're going to watch Ribovics put some volume on Brenner. And Brenner returns big. He returns big, and Ribovics is very hittable. So that's what makes it pretty fun, is Ribovics is going to put on a stupid amount of volume. And Brenner is willing to give volume. He's willing to put a lot of volume out there, and none of them are really going to be shooting in takedowns as much. I do think Brenner will probably try to initiate the clinch every now and then after Ribovics throws in a stupid amount of volume at times, and Brenner's going to get hurt, and he's going to try to hit the clinch, or maybe something gets thrown at him, he gets a little bit overwhelmed, tries to get the clinch to get Ribovics off of him, and gets some sort of separation out of it, ends up finding out Ribovics is going to be in his face no matter what. I think Ribovics is going to put a stupid amount of volume there. I think Ribovics is very open to get hit. And Brenner is, although Brenner could definitely land big, I just see Ribovics putting it on him. I think the amount of damage Brenner just took against Joel Alvarez was very bad. I don't think this high output fight for him against Ribovics was a really good finisher. He was a really good high output guy in round 1 through round 3, and honestly won't stop too much across these 3 rounds with his volume. And the way Brenner fights, it's going to be welcoming it. It's not like Nasrat Hakparas against Ribovics, where Hakparas likes to be on the back foot, on his bike, keeping Ribovics at distance and managing to keep him off of his volume. That's not how this fight's going to go. I think Ribovics is going to land some big shots. He could win by knockout here. I'm going to pick him by knockout. I'm going to pick Ribovics by knockout in this fight against Elvis Brenner. Probably a later knockout, but it's going to be a pretty sick fight overall. Ribovics by knockout against Elvis Brenner. Moving on to the co-main event, Metal Trebeki versus Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan has had some of the flukiest wins in the UFC. These guillotines can't keep happening. There's just no way. And look at Metal Trebeki. Do you really think Metal Trebeki is getting guillotined? Seriously, think about it. Like, really? No, it's not happening. There's no world where Metal Trebeki gets guillotined by Chris Duncan. And Metal Trebeki is the better pressure fighter. He is the better striker. In my opinion, he's more defensively sound. I think Chris Duncan is way too wide open to get hit. And I think we're forgetting that Chris Duncan is stupidly chinny in the UFC. In MMA in general, he's very chinny. Or somehow gets knocked out several times in a fight and keeps recovering and he keeps himself alive. But at the same time, I don't really see that happening too much against Metal Trebeki. I think Rebecca's a much better finisher than the guys that Chris Duncan fights, and he gets hurt against, but he recovers. I think Rebecca puts it on a little bit better. I think Rebecca finishes these opportunities a little bit better, and I think he's going to get that opportunity early. I think Metal Trebeki is going to knock out Chris Duncan. I don't think Chris Duncan's going to be able to put too much on him. I don't think Chris Duncan, anytime Chris Duncan opens up in the striking here, he's going to get himself landed on. He's going to eat big shots anytime he opens up in the striking here. I don't think he's going to be able to put on that much opportunity. I mean, look at the Manuel Torres fight. He's wide open to getting knocked out. He's wide open to getting hurt big. And I think Metal Trebeki is in a much better finish than Manuel Torres is. He's much cleaner overall with the striking. He's not as wild. He's much sharper, and he could do it across 3 rounds no matter the pace, and we saw it. The CDF fight was a little bit interesting for him. He ended up gassing out big, and CDF's a really good pressure fighter and a very well-tenured vet in the UFC who's fought some very competitive fights against very high-level competition. And it was a big wake-up call for Rebecca in that fight. I think Chris Duncan's going to get knocked out in this fight. I think Rebecca's going to pressure him. I think Rebecca's going to hurt him. And I think Chris Duncan's wide open and just get knocked out cold here. And Rebecca will finish these opportunities if Duncan attempts to try to recover after getting hurt bad. Give me Metal Trebeki by knockout in this fight. And moving on to the main event. This is the first ever prediction I have made in which I have switched my predictions on mid to end week. Usually I make my predictions on Monday of fight week on TikTok, and then I post on Monday of fight week on YouTube as well. But because the main event fell through, I was waiting to see the new main event, and we ended up getting this one Monday night. I made my predictions on Tuesday morning. I picked Taira Taira. I watched a little bit more tape on these guys, started going through their wins, started going through these matchups, and saw Taira in some pretty interesting grappling positions. And he's very young. He's definitely improving. Obviously, we watched him against Brandon Royval, but Brandon Royval isn't putting too many people in some insanely bad grappling positions that are pretty high level. And I mean, Carlos Hernandez is getting on top of Taira Taira, which Carlos Hernandez got smoked against HyunSung Park. MMA math, we won't go there, but you know what I mean. We've watched some much worse level competition, much worse grappling level competition, give Taira a lot of trouble and get on top of Taira and put him in really bad positions overall. We haven't seen that with HyunSung Park. HyunSung Park, in my opinion, is better on the feet. I think he hits hard on the feet. I think he sets his shots up a lot better overall on the feet. I like his pressure on the feet, and I think he deals with pressure on the feet and deals with attacks on the feet better than Taira does. I think he's the better, I wouldn't say better grappler. I think he's enough of a grappler to keep Taira honest in this fight. I think his takedown defense is very solid. I think Taira is worse defensively in the grappling than HyunSung Park is. I think HyunSung Park's takedown entries are better than Taira Taira's takedown entries. I think HyunSung Park is stronger than Taira Taira and a better overall wrestler than him. Maybe not a jiu-jitsu player, but an overall wrestler. I think he's closer to his prime. He's 20. I think he's 29 years old. Taira Taira is like 23, 24 years old. Still improving, still exponentially improving, and fighting Brandon Royval to a split decision. But I think HyunSung Park is just a little bit better everywhere. And I think, honestly, significantly better on the feet with much more finishing ability on the feet. And Taira got hurt against Royval, which Royval's a very good overall fighter and really good with the setup of the shots. But he doesn't have some insane knockout power. He had this really sick knee against Metalis Nicolau. Apart from that, I mean, not some insane knockout power in his hands. HyunSung Park has some pretty big power in his hands. I think he sets it up well. I think he sets it up well with his pressure. I am worried that it's his first 5-round fight, and it is on less than a week's notice against Taira Taira, and he did make the weight, and he looked in shape, and he was in camp. but he wasn't in camp for the style Taira had, and I think it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting fight, and then we're going to watch HyunSung Park finish Tatsuro Taira in this fight. I think he's going to hurt him. I think he's going to be able to get on top, and I think he's going to be able to land some pretty physically imposing damage. Tatsuro Taira is a better jiu-jitsu player, but my concern is I don't know how Park looks across, rounds 3, 4, 5 when it's a short notice fight in a 5-rounder, especially understanding that he has to pace, and sometimes that can get into these fighters' heads that, okay, well, even though I'm in round 3, and usually I do well in 3-round fights, like I'm starting to gas in round 3 a little bit, thinking, the anticipate, the anxiety of having to fight another round, another 4th round, a 5th round even possibly. That can get to these fighters, and I feel like that can, I don't know. I don't know enough about HyunSung Park's 5-round cardio. I don't know, especially at this stage of his career at the UFC against high-level competition. We have to find out. But I'm going to trust that this fight ends early. I'm going to trust that a fight on this short of notice between the two is going to end early. And especially with their styles, I'd be surprised if we don't see positions where one of them finishes the other. And I think HyunSung Park is going to be able to find some big shots on the feet. I think he can get some really good overall position on the mat. I think he could hurt Tatsuro Taira in this fight. And I'm going to pick him by knockout. If not, he's going to have Taira very, very hurt and possibly submit him. But I think he's going to knock out Tatsuro Taira in this fight. I'm taking HyunSung Park in this fight by knockout against Tatsuro Taira, shocking the world on very, very short notice. And it's going to be a very fun overall fight. I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to watch this card. We have some fun fights. By the way, fight of the year contenders last year, Esteban Ribovics and Mateusz Rebecki. Rebecki against Orlby, Ribovics against Zellhuber. This one was at the Sphere, and the UFC put them both in the Apex. I saw that on Twitter. I'm mentioning it now because that is wild. Thank you guys all for watching. If you guys like these videos, click that like button and subscribe. Please help your boy grow. I post on TikTok every single day. I go live on TikTok every single day as well at MMA_DBM. Follow MMA_DBM on TikTok. Help your boy grow. We're on our way to 20,000 followers on TikTok, and let's get to 1,000 followers on YouTube. 1,000 subscribers on YouTube as soon as possible. If you guys enjoy these videos, let me know. If you guys don't enjoy these videos, let me know. Comment down below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll be making a post-fight. Well, most of you guys are probably gonna be watching this fight day, but I'll be making a post-fight recap of the card. Anyways, see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.